Today we're starting chapter 6 talking about percents. A percent is a ratio that compares a number out of 100. So a percent is always out of 100. I want to know what percent of the figure is shaded. What percent of the figure is shaded? Well, the first thing I have to know is how many parts are shaded. There's 3 parts shaded out of a total of 4 parts. 3 out of 4. So mentally I know that that is definitely more than 50%. Because half of 4 is 2, and I know I have 3 parts that are shaded. And I know that the entire shape is not shaded, so it's definitely not 100%. So since I know that percents are always out of 100, I'm going to use a proportion. 4 can go into 100 25 times. When I do the bottom, I do to the top. And I say 75 out of 100 is 75%. So that means that 75% of the figure is shaded. So what percent is not shaded? If 75% is shaded, then only 25% is not shaded. 100% minus 75% represents the part that is not shaded. You could also use the fraction 1 out of 4. 1 part not shaded out of 4 parts, total parts. The most realistic place for you guys right now for percents is talking about your quiz and test scores. If you just took a quiz that had 20 questions on it, and you got 3 wrong, you want to know, what percent did I get? Well, the first thing you have to know is how many questions did you get right? If there's 20 questions and you got 3 questions wrong, that means that you got 17 questions correct out of a total of 20 questions. So again, you want to look at that fraction and understand what has to be true about this percent. Since it's 17 out of 20, I know that it's more than 50%, because 50% would be 10 out of 20. I also know that it's less than 100% because I did not get all the questions correct, 20 out of 20. So what percent is that? So I can use my proportion, because percents are always out of 100. 20 goes into 100 5 times. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. So I have an 85 out of 100 is equivalent to 17/20, which represents that I got an 85% on my quiz. In sports, we could say that my basketball team played 25 games. We won 20 games. I want to know what percent did we win? So in order to figure out the percentage that my basketball team won, I have to know how many games I won. So I won 20 games out of 25 total games. So the first thing that I notice when I look at 20 out of 25, I notice that I can simplify that. So I can make the numbers a little bit smaller, so it makes it a little bit easier for me to understand. So I can divide the top and the bottom by 5, since 5 is their common factor. So 20 divided by 5 is 4, 25 divided by 5 is 5. So that tells me that I won 4 games out of 5 total games. So for every 5 games I played, my team won 4 games. So now when I look at the numbers that are a little smaller, I can say to myself, okay, I definitely won more than 50%. I didn't win all my games, so I won less than 100%. So what percent is that? So again, use a proportion, since percents are always out of 100. 5 times 20 is 100. 4 times 20 is 80. So 80 out of 100 is an 80%. So you won 80% of the games, which means that you lost 20% of your games. Anything out of 100 is talking about a percent. So if I say 35 out of 100, that represents a 35%. If I give you the fraction of 9 out of 10, this should be mental math for us, which would be a 90%. 3 out of 5. You should be able to look at that fraction and know that that's more than 50%, slightly more than 50%, because half of 5 is 2.5, but our numerator is 3. So what percent is that? You can put it into 100 and use a proportion. Times 20 times 20, 60, which is a 60%. What happens when you see a fraction that does not go into 100 evenly? For example, 7/8. 7 out of 8 I know is more than 50%, but less than 100%. But it does not go into 100 evenly. So how do I solve proportions when it does not go in evenly? I use my cross products. 8 times x is 8x. I set it equal to its cross product, which is 7 times 100. Then I have myself an equation. I divide both sides by 8, and x equals 87.5%, which makes sense because it's close to 100%, but a little bit less than 100%. So if your proportion doesn't go into 100 evenly, you could always use your cross products to solve. But the first thing you always want to think of when you're talking about percents is what does it make sense as, using your mental math.